Have you ever wondered why some people seem to learn almost anything faster than everyone else? They don't always have higher IQs. They aren't necessarily more talented. They don't spend all day studying. Yet somehow they remember more, improve faster, and outperform people who work twice as hard. If you've ever felt frustrated because you read books, watched tutorials, took courses, and still struggled to retain what you learned, you're not alone. In fact, most people are trapped in a learning system that was never designed to help them master anything. They consume information endlessly, hoping that repetition alone will create understanding. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The harder many people try to learn, the worse they become at it. And the reason is surprisingly simple. They've forgotten one learning method that humans have used for centuries. A method so powerful that it can dramatically improve memory, understanding, and long-term retention. The strange part, it's hiding in plain sight. Think back to school for a moment. What was the standard advice whenever you had an exam? Read the chapter again, highlight important sections, review your notes, repeat the material. Most people still follow this exact strategy today. They watch educational videos, listen to podcasts, read articles, and convince themselves they're making progress. It feels productive. It feels intelligent. But research and real-world experience consistently show something different. Simply consuming information creates an illusion of learning. Your brain becomes familiar with the material, but familiarity is not mastery. Recognizing information when you see it is very different from being able to recall it when you need it. That's why people can spend hours studying and still forget everything a week later. They've confused exposure with learning. Now imagine two students preparing for the same test. The first student reads the textbook 3 times. The second student reads it once and then closes the book. Instead of rereading, they challenge themselves to explain what they remember. They write down key ideas from memory. They ask themselves questions. They struggle to retrieve information without looking at the answers. Which student do you think performs better? Most people assume it's the student who spent more time reading, but over and over again, studies reveal the opposite. The student who actively retrieves information usually wins. Not because they know more initially, but because the act of retrieval strengthens learning itself. This is the forgotten learning method. Active recall, a technique so simple that many people ignore it. Yet it's one of the most effective ways to learn anything. Active recall means forcing your brain to pull information out of memory instead of pushing more information into it. It sounds almost too easy, but that's exactly why it works. Learning isn't created when information enters your eyes. Learning happens when your brain successfully retrieves and reconstructs knowledge. Every time you recall something from memory, you're strengthening the neural pathways associated with that information. You're teaching your brain that this knowledge matters and should be preserved. The problem is that active recall feels harder than passive studying. Reading notes is comfortable. Watching videos is comfortable. Highlighting text is comfortable. Active recall feels difficult because it exposes what you don't know. And most people hate that feeling. They interpret the struggle as failure. In reality, the struggle is the learning. Think about going to the gym. Lifting a weight that challenges your muscles creates growth. Lifting a feather all day does not. The same principle applies to your mind. Mental effort is not a sign that you're failing. It's evidence that you're building stronger memory pathways. One of the best examples comes from language learning. Many people spend years studying vocabulary lists without becoming fluent. They repeatedly look at words and translations, hoping the information will eventually stick. Then they become discouraged when they can't remember basic phrases during a conversation. Why? Because recognition is not recall. Seeing a word and recognizing it is easy. Producing that word from memory is a completely different skill. Successful language learners often use flashcards that force retrieval. They test themselves constantly. They don't just review information. They practice pulling it out of their minds. That's why they improve faster. The same pattern appears everywhere. Musicians don't become great by reading sheet music repeatedly. Athletes don't improve by watching games all day. Public speakers don't master presentations by reading scripts over and over. They perform, they practice, they retrieve skills under pressure. Learning is not consumption, learning is reconstruction. Every expert understands this, even if they don't use the term active recall. They know that real mastery comes from doing, testing, explaining, and remembering. There's another reason this method works so well. It reveals your blind spots immediately. Passive studying creates false confidence. You read a paragraph and think, I understand this, but understanding is easy when the information is sitting right in front of you. The real test comes when the material disappears. Can you still explain it? Can you teach it to someone else? Can you solve a problem using it? Active recall forces honesty. It shows exactly where your knowledge breaks down. That can feel uncomfortable, but it's incredibly valuable. You can't improve what you can't identify. Imagine trying to navigate a city. Looking at a map repeatedly might make you feel prepared, but the moment you start walking, you discover what you actually remember. Maybe you know some streets but forget others. Maybe you understand the general direction but miss important details. Active recall works the same way. It transforms learning from passive observation into active navigation. Instead of hoping information sticks, you test whether it's really there. One reason active recall disappeared from mainstream learning is that modern technology encourages endless consumption. Every day, millions of people scroll through educational content. They watch productivity videos, they listen to experts, they read summaries, they collect information like trophies, yet very little changes. Knowledge without retrieval is like food without digestion. It enters the system, but never becomes part of you. The internet has made information abundant, but abundance often creates a dangerous illusion. We mistake access to knowledge for possession of knowledge. The most successful learners understand a simple rule. The goal isn't to see information as many times as possible. The goal is to retrieve information as many times as possible. That's a completely different approach. Instead of spending an hour rereading notes, they spend an hour answering questions. Instead of reviewing a chapter repeatedly, they close the book and summarize it from memory. Instead of highlighting text, they challenge themselves to teach the concept aloud. These small changes create enormous results over time. You might be wondering how to apply this immediately. The answer is surprisingly straightforward. After reading anything important, stop consuming. Close the material and ask yourself what you remember. Write down every key point. Explain it in your own words. Create questions and answer them later. If you get stuck, check the source, then try again. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is retrieval. Every attempt strengthens memory, even when you make mistakes. In fact, mistakes are one of the most underrated parts of learning. Many people avoid testing themselves because they fear getting answers wrong, but mistakes provide valuable feedback. They reveal gaps in understanding. They show you exactly where to focus your attention. Every correction strengthens future recall. That's why high performers often seek situations where their knowledge is challenged. They understand that temporary discomfort leads to long-term growth. Consider how children learn. They don't become skilled by silently observing forever. They attempt, they fail, they try again. They retrieve information constantly through interaction with the world. Somewhere along the way, many adults abandon this natural process. They replace active engagement with passive consumption. They spend more time gathering information than using it. Then they wonder why learning feels slow and frustrating. The forgotten learning method isn't glamorous. It doesn't require expensive courses. It doesn't depend on special talent. It doesn't involve secret hacks. That's exactly why so many people overlook it. We often assume powerful solutions must be complicated, but history shows the opposite. Some of the most effective principles are remarkably simple. Active recall is one of them. It's a technique used by top students, professionals, language learners, medical experts, and high achievers across countless fields. And here's the most exciting part. You don't need months to notice a difference. Many people experience improvements within days. Information becomes easier to remember, concepts become clearer, study sessions become more productive. Confidence increases because knowledge becomes more reliable. Instead of wondering whether you understand something, you know, you've tested it. So the next time you're tempted to reread notes for the 5th time, pause for a moment. Ask yourself a question instead. Challenge your memory. Force your brain to retrieve what it knows. It might feel harder, it might feel slower, but that difficulty is exactly what creates growth. The forgotten learning method works because it aligns with how the brain actually learns. Most people will continue consuming information endlessly. They'll watch videos, read articles, and mistake familiarity for mastery. But a small group will do something different. They'll retrieve, they'll test, they'll practice recall, and over time, they'll pull further and further ahead. The difference isn't intelligence, the difference isn't talent, the difference is method. And now you know the method that most people forgot. If this idea changed the way you think about learning, don't let it become just another piece of information you consume and forget. Use it today. Test yourself. Challenge your memory. Turn knowledge into something you can actually recall. Because the people who learn the fastest aren't the ones who read the most. They're the ones who remember what matters when it counts.